Welcome back to the Student Hub Live. In this session, we're going to talk about starting well on your psychology or counselling module. Now, there's been a lot of conversations in the chat. You've been filling in our widgets telling us where you are. We're still looking for people in the far southwest of England, middle of Western Wales, far northwest of England and western Scotland. So if you haven't filled in our map to let us know where you are, then please do that. We'd also like to know specifically for this session, how prepared do you feel for module start? Now, there's a widget there with lots of different options. So a multi-choice question means you just pick the one answer that most applies to you. And also, we've got some word clouds here. When and where are you planning to study? And also, what are the most important parts of planning your study? Now, those have 3 boxes in them. If you can't think of 3 things, just put a full stop in so that your results will submit as well. And HJ and Damon are going to take your questions in on the chat. Now, we've had lots of questions. So Jim and Paige, thank you for joining me today. Jim is the Deputy Director of Teaching in the School of Psychology and Counselling and is the qualification lead for the BPS Psychology degree. And Paige is a staff tutor, which means that she manages the large team of tutors on the Level 1 modules. So, Jim, question for you from our audience today is about the psychology degree. And people are saying, well, you know, how do I know what I can then do with this degree? Where do they go to get advice for this?
Where you go with it really depends on what you want to do and what kind of career aspirations you have. So the best people to talk to are our careers service.
Brilliant. And we'll put a link in the chat if HJ hasn't done that already, so you can make a free appointment with them in a variety of different ways as an OU student. Paige, something people have been asking about as well is when they're going to get their tutors' details.
Now that varies depending on which module you're on and where you are. They're going to roll out up until the start date. You will get it before start date. But we obviously can't upload everybody and settle everything all at one go. So we are working on that this week, and you'll start to see that come out more and more, but don't worry what you see on Facebook or anywhere else. You're going to get yours before we start.
Brilliant. And it's great to be super keen, but you don't need to panic if you haven't got those.
Yeah.
So I've asked you for your top 5 tips on starting well in your psychology module. And Jim, the first thing you've said is open the box. Now, what's that all about?
Well, you asked us for our top 5 tips, and we came up with a lot more tips. So
yes.
we categorised them into 5 areas with lots of tips in each. And yes, the first one was open the box, which can be literally. A lot of modules do still have printed books that we will send you literally in a box. Hopefully students have already opened that, but if we've sent you anything that you haven't yet opened, then as soon as Student Hub Live finishes, you know what you need to go and do. But it also means opening the virtual box, which is visiting your module website, making sure you can access all the materials. You can download a lot of it offline, so particularly if you want to do something like read on a Kindle, obviously other e-readers are available. You can download the books to that. You can download audio-video files to your laptop so that you've got them ready. That's particularly important if you're a student who needs support with disability issues and you have special versions such as DAISY audio formats or screen-readable Word versions that you need. Make sure you get all of those sorted out right at the start rather than suddenly find you need them later on and have to go and get them then.
Yeah, because some modules will require that you download certain pieces of software, don't they?
Yes, particularly in psychology, a few modules use SPSS, and it's a very good idea, even if you're not going to be needing it for weeks, to just download it, install it, make sure there are no technical problems with your computer, because that gives you plenty of time to sort it out with the help desk, rather than panic when you suddenly need it for an assignment or an activity.
There's nothing worse than trying to install software when you're in a rush and you're stressed. We've got our OU Computing Help Desk as well that can guide you through any issues like that, etc. Now, having different copies of resources, you mentioned, Jim, reading on a Kindle and other devices being available and stuff. How might that work then for students, and why are those things important with the flexibility in mind that many OU students enjoy?
Yeah, well, students study in all sorts of places, and I think we will come on to some more points about that later on. It can be really annoying when you're thinking, oh, I've got half hour this lunch break, I can get some study done. Damn, I've left my book at home. Whereas if you've got it saved on your phone, or if you've got it on your Kindle or a laptop, whatever you might happen to take with you, you don't get stopped in your tracks like that.
No, it's really important. Now, some students, especially if they've got a disability, they might get different materials and things from the Open University. How does that work?
With some students, it will be special printed materials. With a lot of students, there will be screen reader type things. It's a version that's optimized for screen readers because they don't necessarily work very well with standard PDFs. So there's special coding in them which screen readers work with. And similarly, there are special audio formats for visually impaired students.
Okay, no, that's really good to know. And if students might have one of those issues, but they haven't told the Open University about it, how do they go about doing that?
best thing's probably to call the student support team, let them know. We can't help you if we don't know, basically.
Yeah, no, but there are a whole range of ways to help you. And also lots of students offer tips and advice for workarounds with studying as well. Now, the other important thing is your tutor and your tutorials. I mean, that's really essential, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And make contact with them as soon as you can. As soon as you've got the name, and they will actually send you a welcome email saying when to get hold of them, when they're available. And definitely take that up. Get to tutorials, because the more you can talk about the thing that you're passionate about, the easier it gets.
No, tutorials are really important. So how do students find where they are and when they are, and what are the ways of getting to them?
Well, the beauty of that student home that we were just saying, open that virtual box, go in, click around, get familiar with it. And you'll see that the central column of your student home actually has a box with all your links for your module all in one neat place, and one of them is for tutorials. So you can click straight through, see what's available for you, and see when and book your slot, your place on a tutorial. And I would say get in and think of it like theatre tickets or concert tickets, book everything, right? And then break a leg to get there.
Yeah, and then it comes up on your study calendar as well, so you don't forget to go.
Exactly. That nice little nudge, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's important. Now, we've got a lot of people here who are super keen and it's their first module, but some students are already studying with us. Jim, what's your advice to them about learning from their previous modules?
I'd say probably the best thing to do is to dig out your old notes, particularly if modules are connected. Some modules follow directly on from each other. So, for example, D, 100, 200, 300 in psychology, they follow on from each other. So if you're moving on to a later one in that, go back and look at what you did in the previous ones. And it's a particularly good idea to dig out your old marked assignments as well. You obviously have a tutor on your new module, but it's good to look back at what your previous tutors told you so that you can build on that.
Because often you might be writing a report and you'll think, oh, I've done this before. And if you dug that out and saw where you went wrong, you could correct your learning, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. OK, so hello, Cornwall and the Lake District. It's great to see people joining us from different necks of the woods. And don't forget to fill in our widgets as well to let us know how you're feeling about. We asked you what you were worried about, and you've been filling that in. So let's take a look and see some of the words that are springing to mind about your concerns. So time management is the big thing here. Failing exams, oh gosh, there's so many different things. Health issues, finishing the degree, brain working, health problems, getting snowed under. My brain, sounds like a Monty Python sketch. Progressive, keeping up, referencing, self-motivation, support, tutor, decent tutor, low scores, other commitments, career opportunities, doing badly. Oh, there's so many anxieties here, so many of which I recognise and I would say are very, very common. Any thoughts?
Paige?
Yeah, actually, the one that's really come through for me there is this time management and fitting your life in and everything else around it. And I think that was one of our top tips, really, is that there are two approaches that I think is worth diving into around that to actually deal with that. And one is, think of it as kind of your big plan, which is what you're aiming to do. And that, as Jim said, you get in, you open that virtual box, you have a look at the calendar that's provided, and it's a week-by-week breakdown of what you're going to do for the module. Pick out your assessment dates in particular. Put them into your life calendar. Don't keep that separate from your studying life, so that you can see how your life and your studying are going to intersect. And once you've done that, you can start to plan and you can say, right, here's a bit where things are going to get hectic because I've got an assessment coming in, but I've got caring responsibilities. They're going to be hectic then, or work responsibilities, or taking leave, or whatever. So you can start to plan, right, I'm going to speed up the 2 weeks before that and get more done so that I can get that assessment in before the bad patch hits. Or if things are really bad and beyond your control, I'm going to get hold of my tutor and let's see if I can perhaps arrange a short extension just to get me back on track again. So you're going to look at your long-term plan for the whole year, and that's what you want to do. But then you need to do the next thing, which is the little plan. And I always think of that as being the how I'm going to do it, because that's the bit that actually, where we very often, we know we've got the assessments, we've got them all on the calendar, but how do we actually achieve getting that done? And for that, I would say you then start to say, right, let's look at this week by week. Where's my time? What kind of a person am I? What kind of a life have I got? Am I going to do 3 hours every night, Monday to Friday? Or is that I'm absolutely flattened by the end of the day? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to blitz 7 hours both days of the weekend. And I think this has become much more relevant for people who are working in a gig economy and multiple jobs. and that is I'm going to do different things in different weeks, but I'm going to look out for the kinds of times when I can slot in and put that down. So I'm going to think about that half hour at lunch that Jim said, right? And I'm going to make sure I've always got something with me that I can read. I've known people who've stood in Tesco queues and other stores and gone through and looked at what's on the online forum, and who've made sure they've always got some reading on their phone. You're going to maybe get up 45 minutes earlier in the morning and do it. So you're going to think about, where can I find the hidden time that I don't know is there right now? So that's the how I'm going to do it, is looking at your week and finding the places to put it that works for you as a person.
Yeah.
So it's what you're going to do, the big life plan, and then how you're going to do it. It's the week by week breakdown.
Brilliant. So it's important really to, I guess, also think about other things that are going on, Christmas break, big times of year that, you know, I mean, I always think Christmas, brilliant, 2 weeks off, my to-do list is massive. I'm going to achieve everything. I never, ever do. But it's one of those nebulous times that you think you've got all the time in the world, but maybe having specific tasks or things can help with that. One of the things we asked you at home was, what are the most important parts of planning your study? So let's see what you had to say. So time management here, organisation, planning, reading the information, no kids. Well, yeah, there's a limit, I guess, with some things like that. Sleeping well, confidence is really important. A calm study space, calendar time, waking my brain up, scheduling around the kids, time management, booking tutorials, etc. So knowing key dates. So there's some really important things, many of which you've mentioned. Being healthy, I think, is a really important one as well here. So part of it is logistical in terms of thinking about how and what you can do, but some of it appears to be mindset related.
Definitely, yeah. And I agree with everything Paige has said, but one thing you have to consider is you've got to be realistic with yourself, haven't you?
Yeah.
So you might be able to get up half an hour early before work, but if you're always in a rush, that's not going to happen. You might be able to say, okay, I'm going to blitz through it this weekend, but you know, are you really going to give up everything that you would otherwise be doing at a weekend? And if you try to do that and then like, oh no, I am going to go out to five-a-side or I'm going to take the kids swimming, it's very easy to feel guilty about that. And that can be demotivating. So when you're making your big plan and your little plan, make sure you're being realistic with yourself.
So it's all about these expectations, I think. I mean, I've met so many students who are like, I'm going to get the best. And you're like, why are you going to get the best? You know, sometimes it's really, really important if you have aspirations to do clinical psychology. But I think it's always worth thinking about. Jim, one of the things you'd mentioned was about this expectation and about the importance of considering grades.
Yeah, it's not all about grades. It's about learning things, and I would say for students starting out, and I think a lot of people watching this are going to be students who are starting out. Try not to have any expectations of yourself in terms of what your grades will be. You may have an idea. You may think, you know, oh, I did really well in my A-levels, or I did really badly, or you know, it took me 15 attempts to get through my driving test, or whatever. You might have an idea of how you are as a learner. But you won't really know until you've got that first module under your belt. So don't come in having low expectations of yourself, but don't come in having too high expectations. I would say, if possible, easier said than done, don't have any expectations at all, and just use that first module to set your own baseline and then build on it from there as you go through your degree. Because
those grades at level 1 don't count in terms of the degree classification, do they? So it really, really matters at level 3. To some extent matters at level 2, but level 1 you need to pass, but you need to have fun and figure out what you're doing. Or you could end up doing something you really, really hate later on and doing lots of it.
Yeah, you need to focus on the learning. You need to remember why it is you're doing it. And I don't think many people sign up for a degree just because they want to write a load of essays and reports and things like that. It's because you want to learn something. So enjoy the learning.
Well, no, it's important. I mean, I can't remember what grades I got, but I remember the assignments I loved and did extra research for and that really fired me up. And also, I think some of those skills you learn, you know, you might not remember that report, but you know how to do it. And you're not often giving yourself credit for some of those skills that are embedded in the curriculum because you're so focused on what you're doing instead of how you're doing it. But Jim, I mean, for those students then who are moving up a level, a particular level 2 or 3, where the grades start to matter more, what advice would you give to those students about expectations?
Well, it's similar in a way, except that you've set your baseline. But what students often expect is that they'll get better and better and better and better as they go through. And what they often find is they get better and better and better and then drop a little bit, and then get better and drop a little bit. And that simply corresponds to the modules getting harder as you go up through the levels. If you think in terms of video games, for example, as you get better, or your character levels up, or you get better equipment, the monsters get harder, or the levels get harder, the puzzles get harder, whatever it might be. Studying's kind of like that. as you'd expect, level 3 is a lot more complicated than level 1. It's going to be harder. But you'll learn more along the way, so you'll be able to cope with it. So if your grades are sort of going up stepwise and dropping, going up stepwise and dropping, that means you're basically keeping pace with it.
Yeah. So what might you say to students then about some of their anxieties? I mean, we saw a lot of the worries that we asked students about beforehand, and many of them were perfectly sensible. And in psychology, often we think about things we can maybe control for and maybe ways of adjusting around things that we can't, and feeling okay with that. What would you say to students about, you know, particularly the area of expectations and their worries around things like failing we saw and, you know, not doing well?
Yeah, worries I think often come from expectations and fear that you won't meet your own expectations. Fears of failing are obviously a big thing, but there are ways around that. For a start, you don't necessarily have to pass every individual assignment. You have to pass the module as a whole. Some things might be particularly thresholded where they're very important. Individual modules will explain that to you. You can seek help from your tutors, of course. You know, if you're worried about something, and tutors are very good at giving feedback anyway, but particularly where they get the sense that a student is struggling, the feedback is, they're not judging you is the important thing. They're judging the work, and they're saying, how could you work on this? How could you do it better next time? So yeah, take that on board and learn from it, and take it from module to module as you go.
And if you fail something, you can often resubmit something as well. If you meet a certain threshold as well, it's important to think that failure doesn't have to be absolute.
You
Not
can
for
do
not
in
for-
certain
yeah.
certain instances, but I think following on from what Jim is saying about expectations and self-expectations, also it's about yourself in your own context. Don't get competitive with others. It actually, they're in a different situation to you. They maybe don't have your responsibilities, they maybe don't have your time constraints or your health constraints. So what you're doing is you're doing what is best for you in your circumstances, and it actually doesn't matter what others are doing. And sometimes just getting to the end of the module is the achievement.
So it's important not to compare yourself with
Yes,
other students.
absolutely.
It's all
Yeah.
about your own learning.
Yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant. I want to just take a quick trip to our hot desk as well and see how everyone at home is doing, because there's lots and lots of talk.
No, there's so much going on and it's amazing. I absolutely love it. We've got loads of great tips for starting off and planning as well. Anna had a great one that I liked, said getting rid of time thieves, which I think is fantastic. All those little things that can take up all these minutes and it adds up, which is absolutely great. Chloe gave me a good tip that if you struggle to organise, perhaps have a brain dump, write everything down that you're thinking of on the list or that's on your mind, and then prioritise or organise yourself. Jessica used a note app on her phone as well, which is a really good idea, because if you're out and about or waiting for someone, you can just look at what you've been studying. There was a great tip of putting important dates in the calendar in your phone as well, and maybe putting reminders as well, which is really good. But yeah, there's loads of great things happening on the chat, so keep them coming. I put some of my favourite tips on the board as well, so they'll stay there for me to see, and I'll take those home as well, because I need all the help I can get. We did have a very quick question from Jessica, who just wanted to know, in D100, are we expected to do a lot of critical thinking? Does that take part of the module?
Well, the great joy of D100 is that it's going to help you learn how to achieve critical thinking. So we don't have any expectations coming in. And the whole module is going to be geared to stepping you up, stepping you through slowly but surely. And absolutely, you're going to be developing critical thinking. That is really key. That's what psychology is about. But you'll get there. It's step by step through the module.
Brilliant. Well, Paige and Jim, thank you so much for filling us in. That's been a really, really packed session. Jim's going to log on when he's back at his office as well and talk to you in the chat. So if you've got any questions for Jim, and probably other members of the psychology team as well will be logging in at various points, then do put that in. We're going to watch a video now about whether or not you can really multitask. But before we go, we have time management workshops that you can find out about on the Student Hub Live website. So check those out, book your space on those. Those are in Adobe Connect. They're structured hour-long workshops. So if you're worried about time management, do check that out. Plus, we've got some great critical thinking videos as well. So if you're interested in that, the YouTube channel on the Student Hub Live website also will have heaps in store for you there. Right, let's watch this video and then we'll be back for our next session. See you then.